And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 54. This is the Week 3 preview episode against the Washington Commanders on Monday Night Football, ESPN, and it's also the Bengals Ring of Honor game where they're going to honor Bengals legends Corey Dillon and Tim Krumrie with induction into their Ring of Honor at halftime. So it's a big game for the Bengals. We're going to do a quick preview of the game. I'm recording this on Sunday night after most of the Week 3 NFL games have already played out. So the Bengals have a good idea of where they stand, what they need to do, but they can't worry about what everybody else did. They got to focus on this game and getting a win, one game at a time. Last episode 53, we talked about how the Bengals lost in heartbreaking fashion in Kansas City to the Chiefs. It was a very entertaining game just for football fans in general. If you were just a neutral fan, I'm sure it was a great game to watch. Lots of people obviously tuned in because it was one of the most watched television events of the year. Unfortunately, the Bengals came up 1 point shy. A lot of things could have been different if they would have gone one way or the other. It could have gone to the Bengals' fortune, but unfortunately they weren't able to pick up the upset victory against the Chiefs, and that brought the Bengals to 0-2. At the moment where we stand on Sunday night, there are only 3 teams remaining in the NFL who haven't got a win so far. The Tennessee Titans are 0-3. They're the only 0-3 team. The Jacksonville Jaguars, who also play on Monday night, are 0-2. They're playing against the Buffalo Bills. And then the Bengals are 0-2. So the Jags and the Bengals are the only 0-2 teams remaining. A lot of other teams who were winless picked up a victory, including the Colts, the Giants. See, I'm just scanning through the list. The Panthers even got a victory with Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, filling in for Bryce Young. And the Panthers looked immediately way better. But it doesn't matter. Like I said, all those other teams, we have plenty of time for that. But the important thing is Bengals need a victory. And in this episode, we're going to talk about this matchup against the Washington Commanders, who come into this game at 1-1. They've already had their taste of victory last week against the New York Giants. And the Commanders played a strange game where they didn't have any touchdowns, but they beat the other team by scoring 7 field goals, a franchise record for them, 7 field goals. The Giants kicker pulled his hamstring. Graham Gano pulled his hamstring on the opening kickoff, so he was not able to kick for the rest of the game. That meant the Giants, they tried to use their punter to kick the extra point the first time when they got a touchdown, but he missed. So after that, they went for 2 instead of even trying to kick it. Didn't get him. So that was a weird game where they scored 3 touchdowns, but no extra points, the Giants did, and lost to the Commanders, who had 7 field goals. So 3 times 7, 21. If you think about that, that's a little bit crazy that the Commanders had 7 scoring drives in the game and didn't have a single touchdown. They could have had a lot more points. And so coming into this game against the Bengals, the Commanders are 7.5 point underdogs. Bengals are favored by 7.5 points in this game. It's the same amount of points that the Bengals were favored by in Week 1 at home against the New England Patriots, who were also not supposed to be good. And as I always talk about, it's about expectations, right? Before the season started, I thought the Bengals would be at least 1-1 going into this game in Week 3. And after the first 4 weeks, I thought they would be at least 3-1, meaning 3 wins, 1 loss. I thought they maybe would have lost to the Chiefs in Week 2. That was kind of expected. But these other teams, they definitely should beat. But that was expectation before the season. Now, where we stand, Bengals are already at 0-2. They lost week 1. Best case scenario, they can be 2-2 after the first 4 weeks. But I'm not, after seeing what the Panthers did with Andy Dalton, I'm not quite as confident as I was in getting that win next week. But we can't look ahead to the next week. Got to stay on week 3. And these Commanders, even though they weren't good, it's one of those things where they semi-intentionally bad at the end of last year just so they could get a better draft pick, because the draft pick they ended up getting was number 2, and they picked Jaden Daniels, who won the Heisman Trophy last year for LSU, just like Joe Burrow did a few years before him. Quarterback at LSU, Heisman Trophy winner. So that's going to be a big storyline they're going to play up in this game. 2 quarterbacks who graduated or finished their college careers at the same school won the Heisman Trophy with their last year. Joe Burrow was the number 1 overall pick. Jaden Daniels was number 2 overall pick. And that'll be a big matchup to watch in this game. Obviously, last game, I know I always get annoyed about how they say it's the quarterbacks are playing each other. And last game, they literally put up on the screen during the Chiefs-Bengals game, or Bengals-Chiefs game, whichever you want to look at it. They had Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes, like it was a video game or like a boxing match or like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, like Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes. But if you were not familiar with football and you saw that and you were expecting that, you'd go out there and say, like, wait, Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes are never on the field at the same time. So when are they versus each other? And what are these other guys doing on the field? These other 10 guys need to get the hell out of here. Should be Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes, battle to the death. But you never see that. Anyway, they're going to do a similar thing with Joe Burrow versus Jaden Daniels, even though these 2 quarterbacks will never actually play literally against each other. It's them and their teammates versus the other team's defense. And so let's talk about, actually, you know what? Let's talk about the injuries. Why not? Let's start with injuries. Injuries are going to play a key role in this game. I'm trying to pull up the injury report. All right, so let's look at the injury report, because the first 2 games the Bengals have played without their star wide receiver, T. Higgins. And that has had a huge impact on the Bengals' offense, what they've been able to do, and how defenses are able to play and strategize against the Bengals. Because last game we saw Jamar Chase, Bengals' star wide receiver, was getting double covered. It was crazy how many times, if you watched, there was 2 Kansas City Chiefs players running on either side of Jamar Chase, basically down the field, left and right. He had 2 guys flanking him wherever he went, all over the field. And a lot of times they would double Andre Iosivas too. So that opened up a big receiving day for the Bengals tight ends. It was the most receiving yards and most productivity Bengals tight ends had ever had in Joe Burrow's career. So that is probably going to continue somewhat, but hopefully T. Higgins is going to be able to make his season debut. He got a limited practice the first 2 days of practice this week. Then he was a full practice participant on Saturday, has no game designation. He's not questionable. He's not doubtful. Nothing listed for T. Higgins. He's expected to be 100% ready to play. That should be a huge boost. Jamar Chase said in interviews that he expects fewer double teams when he's playing if there's more attention on T when he's out there. Hopefully that is the case. Tanner Hudson, one of their other receiving options, is going to be out. He still has some kind of a knee injury. He hasn't gone on injury reserve, but he didn't practice at all this week. So we'll have to see what happens with Tanner Hudson. But they do have Eric All, the rookie tight end, who stepped up and made a big impact in the game. I think as the season progresses, he gets more comfortable with the NFL. He could have a big impact in the run game and the pass game, because I like what I see out of him. Mike Gesicki, he was limited he had like a calf issue earlier in the week, but he doesn't have anything. He should be fine, but that's just something to watch. Mike Gesicki's a little bit older. Hopefully that's not like a nagging issue, but he should be good. He was, one of the biggest recipients of those passes from Joe Burrow. They're going to need him as that extra option in the receiving game. Sheldon Rankins, though, if we look at the defense, Sheldon Rankins, the defensive tackle, number 98, he pulled his hamstring, was in and out of the game against the Chiefs. He did not practice. He's going to be out. Same thing with B.J. Hill, pulled hamstring against the Chiefs. So Bengals, both starting defensive tackles are out. B.J. Hill is doubtful. They didn't rule him out for whatever reason, even though he didn't practice. So I don't know if his injury is less severe. But that's going to be a big question mark for the Bengals on defense. They did sign a free agent defensive tackle, Lawrence Guy. He's 34 years old, spent at least the last few seasons with the New England Patriots, has, had a decent career. He was in the same draft class as Andy Dalton, 2011. So he's been in the league for quite a while, which is good and bad. The fact that he stayed in the league for as long as he did means that he must have been doing something right. Like if he's been able to maintain that kind of a career, he must have something going for him. But on the other hand, he's obviously on the back end of his career. But we've seen guys like Calais Campbell for the Dolphins. He's, how old is he? He's got to be 35 or something like that. Or maybe his voice makes him seem older. But he's been in the league, it seems like, for decades. And he's still got, I think 2 sacks at this point. So he's making an impact. So older guys still can come in and make an impact. But the fact that he was a free agent still in week 3 of the season, no team had signed him in training camp or leading up to week 1 or 2 games, isn't necessarily a great sign. And last season he didn't have great, Pro Football Focus scores. He was below 50 in his grading. So they just need somebody to come in there and do something because they're, getting depleted. But one good sign is they're going to get some other people back, including Chris Jenkins, their second-round defensive tackle. He had thumb surgery right before week 1, and he was able to practice this week with some kind of a club or a soft cast wrapped around his thumb to protect it. He is going to be hopefully able to play in this game. He's questionable, not 100%, announced that he's like that. The reporters tried to sneak in a sneaky question to try to get him to say whether or not he was going to play. They asked him, "Do you have a lot of family coming to the game?" And he was like, no, they're not coming to the game. So if he said "Oh yeah, a bunch of my family are coming to the game," obviously he would be confident that he was playing. So the fact that he said he didn't have a lot of family coming, we don't know whether or not he's going to play one way or the other. But if he is able to play in this game, that should hopefully be a boost. We don't know yet. We haven't seen him play in an actual game yet, just preseason game. So one way or the other, we want to get some of these rookies out there. Speaking of which, Amarius Mims, their first-round offensive tackle, he was able to practice limited the first 2 days and then full on Saturday. And he does not have any injury designation. So Amarius Mims may make his NFL debut. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to start and play in place of Trent Brown. I'm assuming Trent Brown is still going to play at right tackle, but maybe Amarius Mims can get in there. Hopefully nobody gets hurt, but maybe he can get in as a 6th offensive lineman. They did that a few times with Cody Ford last week, so maybe instead of Cody Ford, they could put Amarius in there as the 6th guy to, short yardage running plays because he, 6'8", 340 pounds, can move, strong, everything that you want out of an offensive lineman. So he's a resource, might as well use him. And that's going to be exciting if they're going to be able to get some more talent back on the field because they've been missing some of these guys. We haven't got to see these new toys that they got in the draft. We saw, Jermaine Burton. We still haven't seen McKinley Jackson. He's still on injured reserve. We haven't seen Miles Murphy, last year's first-round draft pick. So some of these guys are making their way back from injury. Hopefully that will be helpful to get some wins for the Bengals. One last player to keep an eye on as far as injuries for the Bengals was safety Von Bell. Was limited with a back injury Thursday, then did not practice Friday and Saturday. He's questionable going into the game, and the fact that he did not practice those last 2 days of the week, maybe that was just rest because he is an older player and they don't want to aggravate something, maybe something tightened up on him during the week. So that'll be interesting to see who, if Von Bell isn't able to play, who would come in his place. We saw the rookie 7th-round pick, Dejon Anthony, playing at the end of the game for the Chiefs as a safety. But he had obviously a rough outing, so we don't know who would be the first person to step in for Von Bell. But in the locker room during the week, the reporters were able to interview Dejon Anthony, and he, to his credit, took responsibility for the play at the end of the game against the Chiefs where he got the pass interference penalty, and he seemed very torn up about it inside. He said he couldn't sleep for the first couple nights after the game. Took it kind of hard. After the game, the Bengals media department didn't allow any interviews of him, so I think he was very emotional about it, felt bad about it, but he said he got some encouragement from his teammates, people like Joseph Osai, who had a similar moment in Kansas City where he, going out of bounds, got a penalty against Patrick Mahomes that set up a game-winning field goal from Harrison Butker. Very similar, the situation where the Bengals last week got a penalty, set up a game-winning field goal as time expired to lose the game. And so he got a lot of words of wisdom and people trying to pick up his spirits because it's going to be a long season. He'll make plays that'll not make up for it, but good plays instead of these bad plays. But he said, if he could do it over again, he just got to intercept the pass. Like he went for the ball, but obviously you can't go through the other player on your way to the pass, especially if you don't catch it. And so he got there early. I think he was saying, if he had actually caught the pass, then they couldn't really say anything about him getting there a little bit early. But, yeah, he had a couple plays where he got another penalty early in the game. We'll have to see what they do in terms of defensive backfield. DJ Turner, Tyson Anderson, Jordan Battle. They got other guys who they could have put in some of those situations. So it'll be interesting to see how they rotate on the defense. One other thing to talk about were actually fines. The NFL sends out their fines during the middle of the week. And Ja'Marr Chase, we talked about how he got a critical penalty in the game against the Chiefs last week where he was yelling and screaming at the referee, apparently cursing at the referee because he felt like he got a hip drop tackle on one of the plays. It was actually ruled not a hip drop tackle. There was no fine that was sent out for it, so the NFL agreed that it wasn't a hip drop tackle after the fact. But Ja'Marr Chase got fined $31,000 for this outburst on the field, so that's a pretty sizable fine, more than they give out for most players. So one of the bigger fines in the league, and so disrespecting the head referee is not going to fly on national TV, obviously. So he picked up the fine. He can appeal it, but I don't think he's going to have a strong case in his appeal. But there was actually a couple other fines in that game. So Andre Iosivas, wide receiver from Princeton, got fined over $5,000 for a violent gesture. Like I said, after he scored his first touchdown, he did the bow and arrow, pulling it back, drawing the bow, fire an arrow into the crowd, I guess, or I don't know who he was firing at especially, but I seem to remember Brandon Cooks, when he was a rookie, he did a similar thing. I think that was right after the Hunger Games movie was coming out or whatever, but after he scored his touchdowns, he was doing the bow and arrow, and the NFL put a stop to that. They said no violent gestures. You can't do anything obscene or lewd or crude or violent or anything like that. So sometimes you'll see I remember the Steelers last year, the defense did a celebration where somebody threw the ball up in the air and then everybody acted like they were shooting the ball with their, finger guns and skeet shooting on the ball. Funny, but violent gesture, not allowed. Similar situation to this. I'm sure Andrei Iosivas probably is too young to even remember Brandon Cooks. That was, 5 years ago. He was probably in high school, didn't even know what the NFL was. These guys are so young. But yeah, so you can't do the bow and arrow. He'll have to come up with some kind of a new celebration. I know Brandon Cooks now, he pulls the swords out from his back. Like he has two swords sheathed on his back. And now he pulls them out and like sticks them in the ground when he scores a touchdown. But I don't know if he may have gotten fined for that, because now he just kind of puts his hand above his shoulder and quivers it like he's grabbing for something that could be a sword. You don't know. But yeah, so hopefully Andrei Iosivas has a lot more touchdowns to celebrate. But he'll have to come up with some kind of maybe a dance or some other celebration. We did see there was Drake London for the Falcons. He acted like he was shooting a gun into the crowd after he made a big play. I don't know if it was a touchdown or just a big play. Can't be shooting guns into the crowd, especially when, unfortunately, in real life, we see like high school games every week. It seems like you see shooting breaking out at a high school football game. Everybody has to evacuate. So we don't need any guns at football games, real or otherwise. So that was one thing. And then also one of the Chiefs linebackers got fined about $16,000 for an illegal hip drop tackle against Eric All. I think I mentioned that in the last episode when I was watching the game back. It looked like kind of a hip drop, but I don't think they didn't call a penalty for it in the game. And so I thought it must not have been. I thought he did a good job of preventing it, but apparently not. It was a hip drop. He got fined for that. So that's going to be interesting to see if that penalty is actually called in a game or if it's more so just something that the NFL sends out fines for later, because it's kind of hard to see in real time, and if the referee or the official isn't 100% sure, that's a big crucial moment. But at the same time, you don't want to let guys get away with illegal tackles either. But the Bengals, they really need to win this game badly. They're already falling behind the Steelers, who are 3-0, leading the AFC North. The Ravens got a win today, so they're 1-2. The Browns got beat. Deshaun Watson got sacked 8 times in their loss. So the Browns are 1-2, thankfully. But the Bengals, they're the only team in the AFC North without a win. Can't go 0-3. I mean, they're not totally eliminated. We're not calling this a must-win game yet, but the sense of urgency is high. You can't be freaking out. Nobody freak out. Nobody panic. But at the same time, the Bengals really need to get a win. And I think everybody in the building probably feels that, especially because it's going to be a big night, Monday Night Football. And Zach Taylor is undefeated in his Bengals coaching career in prime time at home. On the road, different story. But at home in prime time, Zach Taylor is undefeated. Even going back to that game against the Steelers, Christmas Eve, Ryan Finley, Von Bell blowing up Juju Smith-Schuster, going over the middle for dancing and spiking the ball on the Bengals logo. No, sir, you can't do that around here. So hopefully the Bengals continue that streak of winning home primetime games against the Commanders. Watching the Commanders, though, they're not a bad football team. And on paper, I think they've got a lot of talent, especially on offense, that they haven't really been able to unlock. In a similar way where Jamar Chase has only had 11 targets in 2 games, and he caught 10 of them, so he's been efficient with the balls that have been thrown to him, but he hasn't gotten a lot of them. Same way with Terry McLaurin for the Commanders. Terry McLaurin, former Ohio State wide receiver, he's got all the talent in the world to be a top wide receiver, but he's only had 12 targets. He caught 8 of them, no touchdowns. In fact, the Commanders, rookie quarterback. He's got a running touchdown, but no passing touchdowns through 2 games. So when you watch Jayden Daniels, the Commanders' rookie quarterback, you can see him. He kind of plays like a rookie. He's got a ton of talent. It's obvious why he was the number 2 overall pick. He's got speed, athleticism. He's able to make amazing throws. He's got an NFL arm, no doubt. So it's just a matter of, you can see his decision making isn't all there. He's not seeing the field. Like, there are guys who are wide open. He could have had some passing touchdowns, but he just wasn't looking in the right places, wasn't making the right reads. And so I'm a little bit nervous that he is going to figure it out against the Bengals and start making the right reads. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully the Bengals and Lou Anarumo are able to confuse him, keep making him look like a rookie, make those rookie mistakes. But if the Commander, because they've got so many weapons, they've got Austin Eckler, they got Brian Robinson Jr., they got Zach Ertz, and their offensive line up front is a force that I've on tape watching them against the Giants. They were just like bulldozing the Giants defensive linemen out of the way. And like I said, the Bengals have a bunch of backups in a defensive line. So if the Commanders decide to run, and they're one of the best running teams so far, they're averaging over 175 yards of running per game in the first 2 games are the Commanders. So if the Bengals aren't able to stop the run for once, it could be a long night. Hopefully they're able to figure out some kind of a scheme to stop the run, but I don't know what it's going to be. So the Bengals linebackers and safeties are going to, and that's where Von Bell is hopefully going to be able to play in this game, because he's one of their best run defenders. So they need everybody to stop the run, and hopefully they don't have to sell out and commit everything to stop the run, because that could open up big holes in the passing game. But hopefully the Bengals are able to shut them down in the passing game. They've done a good job so far defending against the pass, and that's going to mean Trey Hendrickson is going to have to come up with big pressures and get sacks and finish, maybe get some fumbles on Jayden Daniels. We'll have to see. Last week he was going up against a rookie in the Chiefs. It probably won't be quite as easy this week, but Bengals, outside of Trey Hendrickson, haven't gotten much of a pass rush. And Cam Taylor-Britt, again, was in the news for talking about the Commanders and how he wasn't really that impressed with the quarterback, Jayden Daniels, and how, they have a good college offense, but again, kind of downplaying the other team and not really, acting like you would normally, basically like putting out bulletin board material and potentially giving the other team more motivation to try to come in here and beat you. So in my opinion, that's not the kind of thing I want the players. You would never see Zach Taylor, the head coach, making comments like this. I'm sure he wants the players to express themselves, but I don't know if he wants the players to necessarily say how they don't respect the other team and aren't worried about them and whatever, because that can come back to bite you for sure. If you back it up week after week, great. Cam Taylor-Britt, he did make a good play last week, and I'm sure he's going to be signing autographs and selling, frame pictures of himself making that interception. But they lost the game, so I don't care how great the interception. The reporters were like, "Oh, that was the best interception ever, best play ever." Blah blah blah. I mean, it was a good play. Don't get me wrong, but number one, he didn't have to dive on that play. So, this week, we saw Dallas Goedert for the Chiefs, or it's not for the Chiefs, for the Eagles, make a one-handed catch where he kept running. He made an amazing one-handed catch with 3 fingers on the ball and kept his feet, kept running, and picked up he didn't even break stride, picked up another 25 or 30 yards on the play. So if you want to talk about impressive, show me a one-handed catch where the guy doesn't have to fall on the ground. That's pretty impressive to me. But also, it's partly the gloves. I mean, they wear the gloves for a reason. It's because the gloves are super sticky. So if you just put your hand out and the ball hits you in these sticky gloves, if as long as you have some coordination and ability to catch, the ball should just stick in there. So if you've never caught a ball with these gloves on, you wouldn't understand that that's not that impressive. I want to see if he had caught that with one hand and then stayed standing up, then I would have been impressed. But the point is, I don't hear any of the other team talking about how Cam Taylor-Britt isn't that good at football. So I don't know why he's making these headlines, but they're not winning. Like, if you're winning games, cool, go ahead and talk whatever you want to talk. But when you're still looking for that first win, I'd rather, stay under the radar. Don't make a lot of comments about the other team. Just say the other team is good. We respect them. There's going to be a great challenge and a great game. And keep your mouth shut. But that's just me. I know a lot of people like Cam Taylor-Britt's kind of like gregarious, always talking type of personality. But for me, as a player, I was just like try to be silent but deadly. Like, just don't say anything. Just let my actions do the talking. People are different. And you maybe would say I'm hypocritical saying that here I am on a podcast, flapping my gums, talking about the Bengals, but I'm not a player, and nobody really cares what I think anyway, so I can say whatever I want. But Cam Taylor-Britt, he better back it up. That's all I got to say. He better win some games, back it up, or stop talking so much. But speaking of talking, the announcers in this game are going to be Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, and Lisa Salters. This is, to my surprise, the Bengals are going to get the number one Monday Night Football announce crew. And maybe even they're going to get the Manning cast. Because last year, this is going to be another game where there's two Monday Night Football games, semi-overlapping, semi-on at the same time. And so last year, the Bengals didn't get Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. They got Chris Fowler and Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick. And they were fine, but they weren't, it felt like, it was kind of this number two team, the second string. So now hopefully the Bengals are going to get a little bit more hype around them, because they played the Chiefs, all that kind of stuff. So Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, big spot for the Bengals. And hopefully this is another coming out party for the Bengals. They usually do a great job. As far as I know, there's no like wear all the same color type thing. Like, it's not all white or all black or orange and black or anything like that. I think this is just Ring of Honor, nothing special, which is kind of good because then they can kind of spread out those special event nights from game to game and not like necessarily double up on Ring of Honor plus everybody all wear the same thing. Kind of just be like, okay, Ring of Honor, and we'll all just focus on Corey Dillon and Tim Krumrie, and I don't know. They'll probably have some other things going on, but hopefully it's a good game. No injuries on either side, but I want to see a good, entertaining game. Hopefully a lot of points, not too many punts, but if there are punts, obviously the Bengals have one of the best ones in Ryan Rico. So hopefully the special teams game, Bengals need to step up their return game. They've got good kicking, but they did miss that extra point. And so a lot of people would blame Evan McPherson and say, oh, he missed the extra point. But like I said, if you go back and look at it, it was because the snap was bad. So if you get a bad snap, that throws off the timing with the hold, that throws off the kick. That's how you can blame the kicker, but really it all started from an errant snap. So we got to get better snapping from Cal Adamitis, set up a better kicking game. That'll be important, not only in this game, but games to come. But we need better returns. Charlie Jones, he had the fumble in game one, went backwards on one play, hasn't really, busted off a long return. So I think he's going to get a couple more chances to make something happen back there, but they might have to put Jermaine Burton in at punt return sooner rather than later. Because we saw in the preseason, he is sure-handed. He can make people miss. He's got speed and explosiveness. So if he's not getting a bunch of snaps in the offense in terms of, he had the 47-yard catch, the deepest catch the Bengals have completed this season. I understand why they want to kind of keep him maybe focused on offense, but somebody's got to return better than Charlie Jones if he's not getting the job done. And he's not doing much on offense anyway, so whoever they got to get back there. And then kicking game, Travion, Chase Brown, whoever it is, if the ball is returnable, they got to get it out past the 25. But this is a big test. This is going to be a test for the Bengals, coaches, players, everybody. Are they focused? Because this is a long weekend. They're in town. You don't know what people are doing when they're away from the team, away from the stadium. So hopefully nobody was going out partying this weekend in Cincinnati before the big game. Everybody, lock in, got to get a W. Because even going back to the preseason, even though the preseason games don't count for anything, the Bengals did not win a single game in the preseason. They were 0-3 in the preseason. They've started off 0-2 in the regular season. 5 wins so far. They need to get a win. They need to get a feeling of winning. Jamar Chase said how he doesn't like losing. I'm sure a lot of these guys don't like losing. So they've lost every game that they've played this year. The fans at Paycor Stadium, they want to see a win. They don't want to keep showing up and watch their team lose football games. I don't want to spend my time watching my team lose all these football games. Now, Joe Burrow, in his interviews this week, he said he's excited about playing on Monday Night Football because he remembers being a kid, growing up, and falling asleep watching Monday Night Football before school on Tuesday. And now he relishes that idea of being that guy on television that all the kids are watching before they go to school on Tuesday. And so, even though I'm not a kid anymore, I'm young at heart. So I'm going to be watching Joe Burrow as he goes out there with the rest of these Bengals and lead this team hopefully to the first victory of the season. I tried to remember, has Joe Burrow ever played this Washington team before? And actually, yeah, it was unfortunately that game his rookie season where he got hurt his knee. So I was like, oh, that's probably why I tried to cleanse that from my memory banks and don't even think about it. But like, oh yeah, they did play the Commanders. That wasn't good. Hopefully a better outcome in this one. And I think getting all these players back that they've been missing, and hopefully no more players get injured, but if they're able to get some more of these talented, second, first round picks back that they've been missing, that should give them the shot in the arm that they need to kind of get things going and play like the team that we were expecting them to play like. So tune in, and then after the game, we'll come back, break it down, try to keep it concise. I know the last episode was super long, but there was just so much going on in that game. I felt like I had to cover everything, but hopefully this week's game is just as exciting. So until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hooday and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.